Today I am going to demonstrate making cheese straws or cheese biscuits, whichever shape you decide that you want to go for. And you don't need many ingredients to do this, and hopefully lots of you will enjoy having a go. So the first thing you need to do is get everything ready. So I have greased myself a baking tray ready, and I have popped the oven on to 200 degrees, which is the equivalent of gas mark 6. I've got my flour, my egg, my margarine and my cheese, which are the main ingredients for the biscuits or the straws. But then I've also just got a small amount of cheese that I'm going to keep for the top of those, and I've just got a small amount of milk to brush onto the top as well. So the first thing that we need to do, put your flour, this is self-raising flour, into a mixing bowl, and we're going to add the margarine. Now I find it easier if you coat that in flour first before breaking it up into smaller pieces and then coating those in flour. It just makes it a little bit less messy. So what you're going to do then is move on to the rubbing in, what's known as the rubbing in method. Excuse me. Sorry, I did move away from my food to do that. So I am going to do the rubbing in method. Now what you do here is you bring your flour and your margarine between your fingertips and your thumb, and you just rub them together. Now you can do this with both hands at the same time. I'm using a smaller bowl here so I can demonstrate it to you a bit easier. But as you can see, I am just rubbing that mixture through my fingers and my thumb to make sure that it's all mixed in. And each time, try and make sure that you are bringing up flour from the bottom of the bowl to make sure, as I said, that you are really mixing all of that together and you haven't just got some plain flour on the bottom without anything rubbed into it. So we need to keep going with that until there are no big lumps of margarine. Now this is exactly the same as you would have done if you've managed to make crumble with one of us in school, if you've managed to do scones, if you've managed to do pizza, the rubbing in process is exactly the same. This is going to look more like a crumble mixture though, because we are using half the amount of fat to the flour. So what I'm going to do now, I just need to gently shake my bowl together. Any lumps that are still in there will come up to the top, and I just need to keep rubbing those in until there are no big lumps of margarine still in there. Right, the next thing I'm going to need to do then is add my cheese. So I've already grated my cheese. That's going to go into the bowl, and no reason why at this stage you can't just use, again, your hands, your fingers to mix that all together, making sure that it's mixing right the way throughout. Then we're going to add the egg. Now I would suggest that you beat your egg first, so pop it into a small bowl, into a cup. What it does help, which I'm glad I just double checked there, is that you haven't got any shell in there. I very rarely get shell in there, so I didn't bother. Oh, actually it's not, it's a piece of margarine that's obviously slipped in from another bowl, but just as well to take it out anyway. So just with a fork, gently beat that together, and as I said, it is a good idea to put it into a small bowl first without putting it straight into your larger bowl, just in case you do get any egg in there. Okay, that should have been in case we get any eggshell in there, obviously not egg, because we want the egg in there. So I'm just going to make a bit of a well, what's known as a well, so just a bit of a gap in the centre there of my mixture. I'm going to pour it in my egg, and then we just really need to give that a big mix until it all comes together as a dough. Now you can do this with a wooden spoon. I prefer to use a knife because you can, well, I just think it goes through the mixture easier than a wooden spoon. It does tend to clump sometimes with a wooden spoon. So that has all come together now as one ball of dough. which is what we are looking for. Now, if you had a really large egg and it was a bit too sticky, what you could do at this stage is just add a bit more flour into that. So we're going to pop that down then on a floured surface. So just get the mixture out of the bowl and start kneading it on the flour. Now this again is just really to make sure that it's all mixed in well, and as I just said to you, so that it's not too sticky. This is actually a little bit sticky, so I'm just going to knead it around in the flour for a bit just to take that stickiness off it. Now what you need to decide is whether you want to go for cheese straws or if you want to go for biscuits. Now I'm going to do biscuits on this occasion, some small savoury biscuits, but I will show you first of all how to do the straws if you decide that you want to go for those instead. So as I said, just making sure that that's not too sticky. And again, as I've said on other videos which I've done for pupils, I personally don't use a rolling pin. I tend to find that if people use rolling pins, they do get a bit carried away and roll them out far too thin, although for this we do actually need it quite thin, but I'm again quite happy using my hands. If it does get a bit sticky, again just put a bit of flour on the palm of your hands and keep on patting that out. So we need to pat it out until, as I said, quite thin, about 1/2 centimetre thick. Now again, I'm just making sure that I'm keeping enough flour over there underneath it so it doesn't stick to the work surface. Alright, so we've got those now. Now if you are going for the straws, it's better to try and get it into more of a rectangular shape, and then what you can do is just cut them into strips. Now as I said, I don't want to do that, I want to do biscuits, so I'm just going to use a small cutter and cut these out. Now if you decide to do the same, try and make sure each time you cut them that you are cutting them as close to the previous one as possible, because that means that you don't have to keep rolling the dough out time and time again, which tends to not give you such a good finish. You always get the best results from that very first roll, so the more you can get from that first roll, the better. Okay, so as you can see, I've managed to make quite a few there. I should just get one more. So these now are going to go onto our baking tray, and I'm just going to space those out just to make sure that there is enough space between them for the heat to be able to circulate while they are cooking. Now rather than you wait for me to roll out the rest of those, I'll just show you how these are going to be finished off. So just got that bit of milk and a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush at home, you can just as easily use your fingers, as long as you don't mind dipping them in a bit of milk. But using your fingers is not going to hurt. That's very often what I tend to do when I'm making pasties. I use my fingers to put the water on to seal the edges. And then just take a little bit of the cheese and pop that on top of the biscuits. When you've done that with all of them, then, as I said, I would recommend that you cut all the biscuits out first, but I just didn't want you to wait for me to roll that back together. So once you've got all of those ready, you can pop those into the oven, where they will take between 10 and 12 minutes to cook. I'm just going to finish these off and then I will show you them all done. So these are ready to go into the oven. So as I said, I've just brushed those with milk now, put some cheese on them, and they'll go into the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. So 12 minutes in the oven, and these are done now as much as I would like them to be done. So I'm just going to let them cool down briefly on the tray, and then using a spatula, I'm just going to lift them onto the cooling rack. Once they've cooled down, then they can be put into an airtight container, and they will be okay for up to 2 days until you're ready to actually eat them. So I hope you enjoy doing this practical as well.